Talk Show. Recorded live.
Hello, and welcome to the Castle Dracula podcast. On this podcast, we talk about horror movies, vampire movies, and all-around awesomeness. And this week, we continue our sexy vampire retrospective with Tony Scott's cool, seductive vampire love triangle drama, if that's what I can call it, and that seems like not even enough, The Hunger. The Hunger from 1983, starring David Bowie, Catherine Denueve, and Susan Sarandon. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have, so warning, spoilers ahead. I'm your host, Jason Henderson, author of the new Alex Van Helsing adventure, Triumph of Death, in hardback and ebook from HarperCollins, so look for it at Amazon or your local store. With me are Tony Salvaggio, creator of the new manga, Psychom, Book 3 from Right Stuff and Tokyopop. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
And Adam Foshko, screenwriter and consulting producer for such games as Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, Skylanders, and the upcoming Skylanders. What's the upcoming Skylanders? I'm missing. Skylanders Giants?
That's right.
I'm missing the notes here, and I apologize. Among others, yes, so mainly Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, Skylanders, and the upcoming Skylanders Giants. Very popular. And color commentary from attorney Julia Guzman. Say hello, Julia.
Hello, and happy birthday early, Jason.
Thank you. I feel like early, Jason. My birthday is, in fact, tomorrow. That's true. All right.
Congratulations. That's great.
Okay. And by the way, Adam can be found at on Facebook and IMDb. And Tony you can find at, we've got the Psychom Facebook page. All right. The Hunger. The Hunger is really all about mood. As we said, this is the second movie in our sexy vampire retrospective. I want to lay out the basic beats and then we'll get into it. The Hunger opens with intercuttings with three elements. A sexy vampire couple, Catherine Denueve and David Bowie, as they pick up a younger couple and take them to a hotel only to slash their throats and kill them. A lab monkey that's gone crazy and attacked another lab monkey. And the band Bauhaus singing Bela Lugosi is Dead. Those three things are going on, and that really sets up the entire movie because the monkey story brings us to Sarah, a researcher in aging who's working with monkeys and working with volunteers, and her research interests David Bowie, the male half of the vampire couple, because David Bowie is beginning to age rapidly, and as soon as he's shriveled up, because all the vampires who accompany the lovely Miriam do die, or they shrivel up at least, Miriam begins a love affair with Sarah, with deadly consequences for them both. And I really want to compare this woman with the woman that was in Daughters of Darkness a while back. So, first impressions, The Hunger. And let's go, how do we want to do this? Why don't we go in alphabetical order? So that would be Adam, Julia, Tony, and then I'll go. So, Adam, first impressions, top impressions, The Hunger.
Well, what can I say? The Hunger is just one of those films that, leaves an indelible impression on you when you see it. I saw it, when I was a lot younger, when it first came out. It's beautifully shot. Tony Scott directing, and each sequence is like a beautifully composed still at times. It's one of those things that has a lot of mood, it has a lot of atmosphere. It's obviously sexy. I think it was certainly my first introduction to Catherine Denueve, and Susan Sarandon when she wasn't in Rocky Horror. It was sort of like that was sort of. And then David Bowie on top of it. It almost becomes a lot, almost too much. It makes the boyfriend of Susan Sarandon just seem like kind of like a wet towel. It's like, what's he doing in the picture? It's like they're so incredibly beautiful, and it seems to once you work in Bauhaus. I mean, even though it's the opening sequence, you could literally say, the opening sequence and the feeling you get from that it's kind of consistent throughout. You really kind of get this sense of it's beautiful. Even when it's horrific, it's sort of beautiful, and it's got its own particular style that I think it has carried forward even today. Even though we've gotten a lot deeper into, I think in a lot of ways better vampire movies, this is still a cornerstone. it's lovely. It's an enduring piece of work.
Okay, all right, lovely, enduring piece of work. Julia, I had you seen this movie before?
No, shockingly, I have not seen it. Shockingly, because I love David Bowie, I love Susan Sarandon, and of course Catherine Denueve is just beautiful and wonderful. So I don't know how I didn't see it. I guess because up until this podcast, I just had a kind of a policy of not seeing horror films. So maybe that's what happened. Anyway, but I think it's absolutely just beautiful and gorgeous, just like Adam was saying. Visually, and it's really interesting. I'm really glad that we chose to do it because obviously in honor of Tony Scott, who is now deceased as of 2 weeks ago. And so it's a great choice and a timely one. But I really loved, just looking at it. I mean, I think it was so interesting. Everything from the cinematography and all the kind of John Woo-esque, doves and curtains. We were talking about how it's like the Total Eclipse of the Heart video, with all the sheer curtains blowing around and everything. Down to the makeup, the old people makeup. This is the best aging makeup I've seen in a film, and the mummy makeup is awesome. The mummy effect, So I just think that they really just got every single detail right when it comes to visual. I mean, story I think is pretty good, pretty solid, but visually I think it's really quite remarkable. I kind of wish that Drew was going to be on it because Drew hates this movie, and I'd like to know why. But I guess I'll have to tell us another time because he's not with.
Yeah, I wouldn't presume to speak for him as to why. Wow. Okay. So, and Tony, I presume you've seen The Hunger before, probably several times.
I've seen it a long time ago, and I hadn't really watched it since. I guess when I saw it, it was kind of a slow burn, and I was really more into different kinds of horror. But this is one that the visuals and everything, they're of a time, but they somehow a lot of it still works, especially and it's weird too because I saw online when Tony Scott passed away, a lot of people who were kind of bagging on Tony Scott, and other people were almost apologetic, well, he has his moments, but he left us with, some good movies, and I'm like, it's watching this, it is a shame, because I think he left us with a lot of really awesome movies, or at least a lot of really awesome, impressions of movies, whether you liked every bit of a movie or not. I think he's one of those directors that left us with wow, that was really cool. And even if you don't dig every movie he made, it's still there's so much good stuff that he made, and so much each piece was a kind of a piece of a time,
Yes.
And this definitely has that. It's really awesome, and it's got David Bowie attacking a guy on roller skates. And that's not something that's ever been done before or since, or even probably thought of when people were listening to Bowie. One day, one day
Major Tom,
one day Ziggy Stardust will try to get his youth back by attacking a man on roller skates, listening to, I guess, is that the Cars?
What was he listening to? I can't even remember. I thought it was the Cars. It was something like that.
Yeah.
Wow. No, good thought. By the way, I wish I want to know from somebody in New York, where is that they filmed that? Do you have any idea, Adam? What is that tunnel where they filmed that roller skate scene? Because I've seen it before.
Of course.
What's that?
In the 80s roller skate district, of course.
Right.
It's where they filmed Electric Boogaloo too.
Yeah.
I've seen that paved underpass thing is commonly used. I've also seen it for beaten up drunks. I've seen it,
Well, there's the thing that they use that's in Central Park, which is what Greg says that they always use for the
yeah, but that's not this one.
The murders,
all
the murders always
happen
happen there. But Greg says super safe place.
Yeah. Is that the one that was used in Body Double? That one, that tunnel?
Well, they use it in Law and Order all the time.
It's the tunnel that's used in The Brave with
That movie with Jodie Foster. What's that one called?
Yes, yeah, Jodie Foster.
Oh, the Accused, the Brave.
That's a different. The Accused is different. That's
called Brave. It's called Brave.
Called The Brave.
The Brave.
The Brave.
Really?
I know.
I didn't internalize that name.
Anyway, or is it The Brave One? It doesn't matter.
Brave One. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so here's my opening thoughts on The Hunger, and not The Brave One. The Hunger. Okay, I want to put this in the context of we're starting this thing, as of last week, called the Sexy Vampire Retrospective, because I wanted to find, some way that we could dig up a lot of these vampire movies that have as their focus something that I don't write about a great deal because I tend to write action vampires, but that have sexiness and what Joe Bob would call, indoor bull stuff sexiness to them, but an erotic element to vampirism, and distinctly going to try to avoid more recent ones. And this, it's so fun to compare this movie with like Blood and Roses, which we did last week, because this is just I'm amazed that Tony Scott has so much vision in this movie. He really says, I'm doing a movie about these vampires that move through American cities, and I know exactly what it's going to look like, and it has this color palette that's extremely disciplined. It never deviates. It's always this blue and sort of sepia and red. It is gorgeous. And the music is also extremely disciplined. We're always using this, and the pacing. The music is all classic. The pacing, is, it follows the music that's being treated, and it has a dreamlike quality. I'm just amazed at the artistry that went into this film, and this is extraordinarily early for him. I think this is Tony Scott's second movie, and you compare this, and you go, well, if this is the guy who made The Hunger, and he's also the guy who made Top Gun, it means that he can really sort of define himself. Like, I know what my overall idea is for this movie, and I can do it. So that's amazing. I love this. Really quickly, I just want to say, all the effects look good. When they're slashing throats, boy, it looks like they're slashing throats. And with those tiny little knives, it looks like it really would hurt to get slashed with one of those things. And every time it happened, I would, because it just looked awful. The horror elements of this movie are truly horror, and they make you scared and they make you sad. So I was really moved. So, and Tony brought up the points also, and I think we'll keep coming up to this. Tony, you pointed out that the Blade Runner came out just like a year and a half before this movie did, and it seems heavily influenced by Blade Runner.
Yeah, all the inside sequences. Like anytime someone's inside, you get like there's a shot where light's filtering through the blinds in her office, and it looks like the that science lab office could just as well be Decker's office somewhere. Like so much of that the kind of rundown classiness could be the guy who creates the cyborgs. Why am I drawing?
Tyrell.
No.
I can't believe I forgot Jodie Foster's name, but I can remember Tyrell. But yes, Tyrell Corporation.
The guy actually creates them at the end. They're at the end. Why am I apologize to people who are listening to this podcast, but I'm totally but I'm with you, and he's playing with like motes of dust. He's showing the light is always sort of bouncing in through curtains or bouncing off of walls from windows, and there's no direct light anywhere in this movie. Sebastian, that's his name.
Yes, right, John Sebastian, who lived in the Roosevelt.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, J.F. Sebastian.
Right, and not the Roosevelt, the Bradbury. He lived in the Bradbury
building.
Yes, and and with that, you're right. In the whole J.F. Sebastian Bradbury sequence of Blade Runner, there's always these big lights being shined in, sort of from outside and sort of bouncing off of walls, and you see a lot of that here. Now that was by Ridley Scott, who's Tony Scott.
Well, has the elevator, which is a gorgeous elevator.
Yes.
And it's all the same kind of thing.
Right. So it's weird. Like if you cut out all the outside sequences where they're walking around New York, you could almost say that this took place in Blade Runner land, because
it totally could. Having said that, I don't think it's a ripoff of Blade Runner. I don't think that Tony Scott is. No,
I think it's.
But I do
like
think it has influence.
That's the vision. Like, I mean, you choose to shoot that. I don't think he was like, oh man, I'm just gonna take that. It's watching those sequences in this movie. It's interesting, you know. I mean, it's doubly interesting, you know, because they're related. Like that's wow.
It really made me think, you know, in Blade Runner, you know, you're looking at a dystopia that's retrofitted a bunch of history, and it's all sort of in the state of decay. Even the stuff that is more modern, you could tell a lot of retrofitting. And this, what's interesting is you have people who are, and if she's immortal, but they certainly have been living, you know, through many centuries. And so the idea of a sort of a timelessness, but a different kind of decay, a different kind of, you know, there's a patina on things. There's a preservation of things from 2,000 years ago. I mean, there's a bust of her from 2,000 years ago.
Yeah.
There's, you know, there are statues and things that are, you know, that also exist in the Blade Runner world, but are sort of remnants of a time gone by and forgotten. And this is something where she's almost preserving this in her world. You know, there's an idea that she's preserving history, but in the modern time, she's also making her own sort of her own world, basically based on stuff from, you know, where the stuff she's collected over the ages. So there's sort of a retrofitting of her life, I guess. But it's visually it's the same sort of idea. There's a lot of timelessness that's imposed on the world.
They also
let's start right out talking about Miriam. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tony.
Well,
I apologize.
The costuming also has that kind of like what would later, like there's a lot of goth stuff, but there's also a lot of that kind of the way Blade Runner combined like futuristic and, you know, kind of
her gowns, her hair is very
and then of course there's the sheer white T-shirt that Susan Sarandon wears.
Yes.
Well, besides that,
right.
But Catherine Denueve's character and Sean Young's character could be in the same, walking around the same, you know, office area or whatever. They could be both in the Tyrell Corporation, and you wouldn't miss a beat.
Right.
You know? And that's
absolutely right.
That's really like their style throughout is extremely similar, and that I don't know, it's just interesting to see all that. Two totally different movies, but yet somehow, you know, there feels like there's a thread between them.
Well, but people have made that argument about Blade Runner.
Yeah, when I was younger, I didn't really notice that. You know, tonight when I was watching it again, I was like, wow, how did I never pick up? And I also, you know, for better or worse, I think this is one of those movies. There's a few, but I think if you really, really tracked it back, in addition to Anne Rice, the reason we have Twilight is people watch this movie.
You think that The Hunger has been deeply influential?
I think so. The way that it made vampires sexy, it uses, you know, Bowie's in it, you know, the way it approaches things, I think that's, for better or worse, it's one of those movies where you're like, hey, wait, vampires aren't like, you know, they're not Jack Palance, they're not Bela Lugosi, you know.
Right. Well, and so
Catherine Denueve. Jason, tell us the anecdote about how Susan Sarandon's response to the.
Oh yes. Well, okay. So, and I want to actually move us into discussing Catherine Deneuve's character and her motivations and everything, but and Adam can shed us a little light on from the book. But yeah, to kick this off, so Susan Sarandon was being interviewed about this movie, and she mentioned that. You know, the producers of the film suggested in the scene where where her character, who is a scientist studying aging, who Catherine Deneuve has become attracted to, she goes to visit Catherine Deneuve, and they hang out all afternoon listening to classical music and drinking sherry, and then they make out. And Susan Sarandon said, well, the producers kind of wanted us to do a lot more drinking, so it would be abundantly clear that I was drunk when I started making out with Catherine Deneuve. And she goes, now, I thought that was absurd. I don't need to be drunk to want to make out with Catherine Deneuve.
Because the reason he even told me that was because I said, well, if anyone can convert a straight woman, it would be Catherine Deneuve.
Catherine Deneuve
so
is just it's sort of, okay, so as I understand it, I haven't read the book, but apparently the Whitley Strieber concept originally is that she is built to hunt, that she is a predator who just sort of actually like the monologue in Twilight. She is built to attract, and that's what she's good at. She's an alien, essentially. She is not, I mean, maybe not from another planet, but she is not a human, period. She's another thing, and what that thing is deeply attractive to human beings. And Catherine Deneuve is as close as we're going to get to that. She's extremely, extremely beautiful, sensual, calm, placid.
European.
Yeah, she never you realize Catherine Deneuve never loses her shit about anything, to my knowledge, until the end, actually. Mm. I'm trying to think of a single moment when her character heart rate rises at all.
Well, I mean, she says after a while, she says, enough, and she throws Susan Sarandon down on the ground. I mean, that's the most that she does. Otherwise, she's usually leaving the room. John going, what am I going to do? She keeps walking. She's always leaving the room up until sort of that point.
Okay, so that's the negative thing about her. That's a good point, Adam. We just said I listed all that stuff. So she's wonderful.
I actually have two other negative things.
Okay.
One is that she's a murderer.
Right.
And the other is she's a liar, which is actually almost worse because you expect the character to be a murderer. But it really made me angry that
Tell us about the lies. What's the deal? Give us the deal on what is the deal with being Catherine Deneuve's companion.
So Catherine Deneuve is not a traditional vampire, and none of them are, in the sense that they don't have fangs and they do have reflections and they can go out in the daytime and all that stuff. What she is she's immortal, and she does feed off of people's blood, and she needs a companion. But she, for some reason, has this special ability to remain immortal and youthful. However, the companions she selects when she feeds from them and they feed from her are immortal, but they are not going to be young forever. They're only going to be young for about 300 years. And then they're going to suddenly age within, 24 hours, very, very, very rapidly until they're like mummies. And then they will not be able to exist in the world as normal people, but they will remain conscious. They will be able to see and hear and smell and feel everything that goes on forever in a mummy state. Like they can't do anything else. Mm-hmm. And so, but she didn't tell them this when at first, and further, Susan Sarandon, she doesn't even tell her any of it. I mean, she doesn't even give her the option of becoming her companion, whereas I think these other people, she actually seduces them into saying, if you want to be immortal and youthful forever, then, join me. And they're like, cool. Right. But I think it's just it's so lame that she just lies to them and says you'll be young forever, and it's like when it's clearly not the case.
Right. I find it fascinating that you find it more appalling that she's dishonest with the people she makes into vampires than that she murders people.
Well, and I think that's consistent with how I see people in real life. I think I will forgive almost any sin as long as first people are honest about it. I'll be like, okay, well, at least you're honest about it. That always kind of comes down to that for some reason with me.
Now what's interesting, and I have it's not an advantage. I just happen to have read a little bit of the book. But what's interesting is, I think it took me, once I read this, it took me a while to sort of kind of reflecting on what I'd seen, of this movie over the years, and like you, Jody, I was sort of like, wow, she never really says, hey, there's a hitch here.
I don't think she even needs to say that. She just shouldn't say they're going to be young forever. She should say they're going to live forever, and she can leave out the part where they're going to get old.
That's omission, and that's even stranger. But hang on a second. So so the way this was described in something that I read was that she had actually been grooming the young girl who was the violinist. And
Alice.
She was going to be the one. Who actually would have taken John's place once upon a time. But when he kills her, and with John gone, the way this was described was she hastily kind of really just sort of turns, does something which is out of character. I guess she behaves very sort of hasty and just changes Susan Sarandon. So there's no,
maybe
no chance to seduce, I guess.
So is this like Batman, where he has to have a Robin around or he goes crazy? I mean,
maybe she was planning on converting Alice, but I really think though that when she goes to see Susan Sarandon at the bookstore, she already starts the seduction at that point, because when she looks at her and she kind of says that, whatever she says to her about the book or something, like you could tell that Susan Sarandon was immediately kind of intoxicated by her. And that when Susan Sarandon shows up at the house later looking for John, she's like, already, she's like, oh, it's you. So, I mean, I kind of feel like even if she hadn't intended for her to be the next person, she was already kind of like, oh, you're interesting,
Well, I mean, she's obviously a selfish character, and, as to the nth degree. I mean, she's got to have an attic or wherever this place is that doesn't appear to exist in time and space, where these coffins are stacked up, where these cadavers, are all sort of whispering to each other. And
I get the impression this is her place, that she has an extraordinarily expensive brownstone that's that's several stories high, and up on like the 6th floor of it is her curtains and doves room, where she keeps all the coffins.
Her John Woo room.
Yes, her John Woo room, where periodically, no doubt, Hong Kong guys come in and have gunfights, but otherwise, it's just the place where all the coffins of former lovers just stay.
I mean, it's lovely. It's a lovely image.
Yes.
It is a lovely image, I guess, if you could think of it in that way. I mean, it is beautiful.
But imagine how bad it must smell. Imagine how bad it must smell with all the dove crap and all the deteriorating bodies. That place must stink.
The deteriorating bodies I wouldn't be troubled by, because they're pretty much cicada husks at this point. I mean,
although they're desiccated.
We're going to get to the end, and one of you will please explain it to me, because I could say this is one of my favorite movies now, but I can't understand the end at all. And it involves this top floor with the with all the
right. Well, also, like, I think that is one of the striking things that you guys are talking about. Where she's a user. She has to have a companion, and she fully knows. And that's what I go back to. That's one of the things that's the most evil. Like, you know exactly what's going to happen. You've kept the bodies. You've probably gotten rid of a bunch of bodies as well. And you know what? You're going to do it anyway because you need companionship. You're going to convince them that they need companionship from you.
Right.
And up until the point, and that's in some ways way more evil than just being a straight, murderer. Just because, like, this lasts, potentially forever.
I mean, you think of, like, Roy Batty, to get back to another Scott character. Roy Batty kills people because he's trying to accomplish getting more life because he's worried he's going to die. This woman kills people to live forever, and then she makes this sort of long-term murder that she does with her companions is because, watch her, she can't deal with anybody. She can't deal with being alone, and she can't deal with aging, because when her companion starts to go south, she can't look at him.
Do you guys think what do you think would have happened if she would have put them into the incinerator? Because they put everybody into the incinerator. They have this.
Oh yes, I forgot. Yeah, downstairs they have an incinerator.
What would have happened if she would have put the bodies in there? The people, the lovers.
It is a question the movie does not ask.
I think they would have burned up and probably gone away, but that's my impression. But again, I think it's one of those things, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I think it's one of those things where even at the point where they're husks, she can't let go. Well, even if I don't have a companion, I'll have one of these things to fall back on, to have these memories, and keeps them around.
Do you think she keeps them around as souvenirs? Do you think she could have freed them if she put them in the incinerator?
Maybe.
I can't tell whether or not. She said she couldn't kill David Bowie. I wouldn't kill David Bowie when he said "kill me." That didn't happen. They were actually in the room. And there's a part of me that was just thinking, okay, well, maybe she has to sort of, like, it becomes a Dorian Gray thing where you sort of like, you got the picture, you have to spend some time looking at it. She has to maybe care for these people as whatever. She has to just carry them with her wherever she goes. What was interesting is when they reanimate, I guess because, well, I mean, we'll get to the end at some point. I mean, what's the critical difference? What's the thing that makes them?
Yeah, what triggers all of that?
Yeah, I mean, I have a theory about that, but
we'll get to that. And when they're all up and walking around, and she does whatever she does at the end, and obviously things change. But the story itself is a very simple story. It's very simple, and there are these interesting sort of loose ends. I mean, there's a police detective looking for Alice and any kind of clues, and there's very little threat. They've always been very careful all these many years. They pick up people, they drive them in cars, they kill them, they throw them into furnaces, and they all go back to their lives, and it's all fine. And they must do this a decent amount, and they've never been caught. And Alice seems to be the first time that anyone's ever sort of come close, at least in movie time.
I was terrified by the murder of Alice. The murder of Alice. Notice we cut away. We cut away from the murder. There are other murders in this movie that don't show up on screen. Like later on, Susan Sarandon kills a male character, and the movie sort of demurely cuts away.
So wait, to back up though, just to say that Alice is a teenager or like a 13-year-old. That that John and the David Bowie and Catherine Denueve's characters are tutoring in music, and they've become close to her. And then whenever John starts aging, he feels like he needs blood, and so the only person he can overpower is Alice. I mean, because he's in the house. She doesn't know it's him because now he's so old, so she assumes he's a relative. But he kills her, and the Polaroid falls and takes a picture so that when Catherine Deneuve comes back, she sees what's happened because he hasn't left the scene, like he hasn't left the body, but the picture is there, so she finds.
Well, she's also a touch psychic. I mean, she'll do this thing where she touches things and gets flashes of.
Oh, really?
She has that contact.
Did you get that sense?
I did. There are a couple of places where she touches things and makes presumptions about what has occurred because of
I thought that was for our benefit, just because of the editorial style.
Well, that's possible. That's possible, Adam. Actually, your read on it might be just as valid. That's totally true. I was taking it that way, but you're right. It might have actually just been him cutting us just to let us know. Oh, can you imagine watching this movie compared with Blood and Roses? Where, especially at the end, which once again we'll get to in just a second after we talk about something else. At the end, I can imagine Blood and Roses had a narrator saying, because the blood has been mixed, everything will go differently this time. But no narrator here. You totally, all the way through, you got to figure out what the heck is going on. Which, as you pointed out, this is a very simple story. The couple's been around for a while. The guy's going away. There's a new girl coming in. It's, there's murders going on. This is very simple. It just gets stretched out through a lot of really interesting choices. Something else I wanted to mention about Catherine Deneuve. I agree with Adam that she creates, I think she's lonely, pathologically lonely. She needs to have people with her. She's creating this world for herself. I like your idea of, like, she has art and things like that create a world that, that sort of celebrates her immortality. But it's so interesting to think that there's no one that without a companion, there is no one for that art to be for. Because what is the purpose of having sculptures to yourself in your own house if you don't have someone else to admire them and sort of marvel at it? It's amazing to me, the sort of pathos in being Catherine Deneuve in this.
I think it's also interesting that there's so much white. Like, she has white sheets and she has white clothing and everything's like, there's this purity to it all, which I've always wondered how they get all the blood out of the white. But maybe she just burns everything.
I think she does. Furnace. She has a lot of money. Her time is her own. You know, the things they do with her hair, you know, are amazing. And she reminds me so much of Delphine Seyrig. Do you remember the actress who was in Daughters of Darkness, which we covered a couple of months ago?
Yes, definitely.
Very much like that cover. I mean, that character. I mean, those two characters could know one another. You know, the Countess Bathory in Daughters of Darkness and Catherine Deneuve in The Hunger are so similar that, you know, you can
they probably
get the
hate
impression
each other.
they would.
Except what's interesting is two things. One is the fact that, you know, I'll say that this is a very sexy movie, and in a lot of ways, as I said a little bit earlier, I think that it's style over substance in a lot of instances. It's gorgeous, and I love it. It's like candy, but it really is. But and it's a very, as you know, in the lesbian vampire, you know, pantheon. This is a cornerstone. And it's beautifully photographed. It's great. Now there is sort of this. It's not laughable, but there's that moment where, you know, Catherine Denueve is there. She looks sort of terrific, and Susan Sarandon is there. She's drinking her sherry, and she accidentally spills it on herself. And I'm like, this is a very sort of ham-fisted porno sort of.
Yeah, where literally.
It's
the movie literally says.
It was even cold. It was even cold in the room, and she had no bra on.
Whenever you go to somebody's house, you know, you never want.
I can't believe you made the nipple joke, Julia. That's hilarious.
Not a joke. It's an observation.
And the other thing is, you know, before they exchange Catherine Deneuve's blood, you know, when they actually make love, you know, Susan Sarandon is topless and is wearing a pair of black panties, and Catherine Denueve is basically wearing what I could tell is basically like a black nightgown. And I'm like, but she's been looking great the entire picture. She looks incredibly she looks unsexy in that particular.
It's not a very attractive. She wears a sort of black camise.
It's very. I was like, that's very. I was thinking, well, maybe what it is she's trying to establish her visually. It's sort of establishing dominance. Where you're kind of going, you know, she is the one who's sort of moving this along. I'm trying to sort of figure out the language of it as opposed to, first I was like, maybe there's something in her contract where we don't see her like Susan Sarandon. But a little bit later, we see them both. So it's sort of okay. But initially, I thought it was an interesting choice.
Yeah, the camise is not that attractive. There's a point, though, later on where they're doing the blood exchange during this makeout scene. So let's get right into Susan Sarandon's character, but start with the makeout scene.
Well, don't start with the makeout scene. Start with the seduction scene, because when she comes in to talk, because I
just want to mention this really quickly, and that's that when you look at that scene where you are watching them together, there are many shots where it's hard to tell one from the other. Where I think deliberately, with the billing of the curtains and stuff, it's difficult to. You know, they become one in the sense that it becomes difficult to distinguish which woman are you looking at. But no, in the earlier points, that's not the case.
Well, also, there's a scene with Susan Sarandon where they show her, like, laying in the bed, and her haircut, and the way they've shot David Bowie in the past, she looks like Bowie.
That's right.
Like, when he's young. Yeah. You're like, and so, like, definitely Miriam has a type. You know?
Yes.
Male, female. She's definitely, there's an angle there. At least it seems like, with the exception of the violinist, but you know, she might have taken the hairdresser eventually anyway to the very 80s.
But so it's interesting that so Susan Sarandon shows up at the house looking for.
Susan Sarandon is this researcher, and she's famous. She's a book writer, and she has signings that people actually go to. That's why I determined that she must be famous. And Catherine Deneuve shows up. Both of the vampires are interested in Susan Sarandon because of her research on aging. Because why? Why is this interesting? I mean, I get that it's interesting to David Bowie because he's aging, but Catherine Deneuve is interested as well.
I don't think Catherine Deneuve wants him to age. I mean, I think she likes him. I think she likes having him around and would be happy.
I think he's just trying to help him.
Yeah.
There's some science now that wasn't available before. She even goes to talk to them and comes back and tells them they know nothing. You know, I get the impression that she really was trying to help.
Help him, right. So when he shows up at the hospital and tells Susan Sarandon, hey, I've got this thing where I'm aging really fast. I'm actually only 30, but I look like I'm 55 or whatever because I've got liver spots. She's like, oh, okay, I'll be back in 10 minutes or whatever, 15 minutes. And then she says, she blows him off. She's like, for 2 hours, she blows him off. When she comes back, he's now like 80. And he's like, screw you, lady, I've got to get out of here, go find some blood. And so then she tracks him down somehow based on the fact that he introduced himself, I guess, and goes to the house. And so now he's gone at this point. But she shows up and Miriam opens the door and brings her in and then starts playing lesbianic music for her on the piano. And
lesbianic music.
To which Susan Sarandon says, "Are you trying to seduce me, Mrs. Robinson?" And Mrs. Blaylock, you're making a pass at me, Mrs. Blaylock. And she's like, I don't think so, Sarah. And I'm like, wait, where did she get off saying that she's trying to make a pass at her just because she's playing piano? I thought that was really funny. But anyway, and then they proceed to make out and whatever.
Well, it's wonderful how that scene is triggered. And I introduced this movie at a retro showing at the Inwood in Dallas, and I remember saying, okay, guys, I want you to look out for when the movie essentially starts flashing big klaxons saying, commence Cinemaxy love scene. Yeah, because all of a sudden there will be a drop of sherry, and then, I mean, this is when the movie literally loses all of its senses and becomes just as dumb as anything with Randy West ever, because it's like, oh, I've spilled sherry. I don't know what else I'm going to do. And and suddenly there's like this choral music everywhere, and we're dabbing ourselves, and suddenly we're making out. It's wonderful.
Well, I mean, I think the whole rest of this movie is really terrific. It's just moments like that where you it's just like, were they just searching for a way to make it work? And it's like, old tricks are the best tricks. I mean, was there just not
old tricks? I like that. That's absolutely right.
Was there not just some more I don't know, provocative? Ever watched The Unbearable Lightness of Being? I mean, is there something that they could have worked in? And it's just like, you know what? That's just, she spilled it. I mean, but it took me. I hate to say it, but in my viewing the other day, so it took me out of it, and I went, I have never looked at it like this before. It took me right out of that moment. It made me go, gosh, that part was terrible. That transition was just not good. It just stood out to me. In an otherwise, really beautiful film in a lot of ways.
And even a beautiful love scene. The love scene itself is pretty beautiful. The transition to get into it is just as dumb as, I came here to fix the plumbing. Oh wait, it's basically, it is no better than the worst 1980s porn. But
the love scene is better.
The love scene is. I'm talking about the transition to get there. Yeah. The love scene's great. The billowing curtains, the canopy bed, all that stuff. Yeah. No, that's wonderful. So yeah, and I agree that the black silk thing that Catherine Denueve wears, isn't doing her any favors. I don't know why they force her to wear that. But
so then they have the blood exchange, and so now she's all vampy.
All right, this is important. Now let's figure out the blood exchange. So what happens? So we drink from Susan. Okay.
Yeah, they don't use fangs. They use these little Egyptian ankh knives that they cut each other.
Yeah, but she doesn't seem to cut Susan. She seems to just suck at her until she manages to.
Okay, let me borrow from the book for a second. Allegedly in the book, she apparently has a tongue like a cat. It's sort of like this rough, like a raspy sort of tongue that actually can strip down. It can actually, I guess, affect skin. So I guess that's what she was doing. And by the way, again in the book, not a Catherine Denueve sort of character. She's a cold-blooded, methodical killer, and very, very scary. This is a completely different picture than what the book was. I like the picture, I think, a lot better just because of just my sensibilities. But I think what this is, this borrows and is not explained. They don't use the ankh evidently, but they do use this raspy tongue, I guess. Or she's got this raspy tongue that I guess makes this makes this hole in her.
Well, I get it, and that's indicated by the way he's doing this montage, where she's spending clearly a lot of time, tonguing Susan Sarandon's arm until finally she draws blood. Yeah. So I got that she was somehow going to work her way through the skin there. So ick and okay, and that works. And then somehow, and I don't remember how.
I think she cuts her own arm, doesn't she?
Does she cut her arm? I can't remember how. Anyway, so. Susan winds up drinking from Catherine, and that seems to be, I guess, the one thing that's different from what she does with any of her victims. And this is familiar to us. We've seen this in a million things. So the blood transfer that starts to catch in Susan Sarandon. She's now got this alien vampire blood inside of her,
which is non-human, like you said. I mean, she actually is a scientist who has her blood tested, and they say you have two kinds of blood in you now. One of them's non-human. And
right.
She's like, what the heck? And it's making her starving, but she's not able to ever eat anything without throwing up.
What did you think of the immediately afterwards? She spent all afternoon hanging out and then making out with Catherine Denueve, so now she goes out to have dinner with her scientist partner, also live-in lover, and he's jealous. And I thought this was a great scene. I loved the jealous lover scene. It seemed very real to me.
This lady, and he's like, for 3.5 hours? What the hell did you have to talk about for 3.5 hours? What were you doing with her for 3.5 hours? Why are you acting so weird? Yeah.
Yeah. Now, did anybody understand? They keep cutting over to, or cutting to. I know this sounds silly, but what was going on with the skinny dipping at the same time as that dinner scene?
I don't think it was skinny dipping that was going on. I think there was a regular pool, and the pool was reminding her that she skinny dipped. I think they skinny dipped earlier. She and Miriam.
I think she was just in there. I just demonstrated that Miriam was in her head, and she was looking at things differently now. Sensually, imagining that the people in the pool are naked and sort of. I think it's just more.
You don't think the naked people were her and Miriam from before?
No, I didn't see them being.
I just got the
didn't look like them.
It was just she's just more in her head. As she was having dinner with her ho-hum boyfriend, who is asking, who's grilling her. She's kind of looking off, and then as she's kind of looking off, she's seeing like a new sort of door has been opened up for her, for lack of a better.
Wow, that's great. Word. That's really great. And I love that the boyfriend is, of course, making himself worse, because the more, and this is just a truth of humans, the more you act desperate, and the more you act, like a prosecutor, the less attractive you are, and it just sort of, it's this spiral. And so he's out the door. He doesn't have to be murdered. He is in real trouble.
Right.
And so Susan Sarandon is having all these problems. So she immediately, they go do the blood test. She has weird blood in her veins. And it's amazing to me as we say this how quickly this movie wraps up, really.
Very quickly.
And
then there's the wonderful Willem Dafoe cameo when she's in the phone booth.
Right.
Right.
He's like, hey, lady, how about it?
Yeah, not saying anything untoward. He just wants to use the payphone, which he's dominating. And I love that this is one of those movies, of course, back in the day when you're stuck with payphones basically to get around. So she goes back to Miriam and she goes, "What did you give me? What's the deal? I got your weird blood in my veins." And Miriam says, basically, a speech that we've heard in other movies. You won't get any older and you won't ever die, and you'll feed 1 in 7 and you'll listen to a lot
of
And
yet no one ever says vampire again in this picture. I mean, and that's like it's a world no one has even heard of a vampire. It's sort of like no
Good
one
point. They've never seen movies. All of this is unfamiliar to them. That's totally true.
Goes, you've been alien blood in you. And that's sort of like, okay, then we're sort of, and then the aging. And no one says, like a vampire. No one says the V word.
Right. And that's still a major case. Is like, do you want to be a movie where you use the word vampire or not?
I think it's to its credit that it doesn't. It's already something that stands kind of on its own and alone, and it's I think to have then gone the vampire. Well, I hate to say that in this particular case, it might have cheapened it. I guess it's not really the right word because I love vampire movies, but because it doesn't start off kind of that way at all, it sort of has this very attractive, alluring. It's, we're touching on it. Bela Lugosi is dead. I mean, we're sort of a lot of talking about all the different things. They apparently have heard of vampires. They've heard of Bela Lugosi in the beginning. They've heard of Bauhaus.
Yeah.
Right.
But there's no reason for them to talk about vampires because there's nothing vampirish about it because there's no two holes in the neck. There's nobody who's just been exsanguinated and is lying around with no blood anymore because all those people are in the furnace.
Yeah, but even Susan Sarandon, when Denueve goes, and you'll sleep, 6 out of 24 hours, and you much feed, and then when you feed, you'll never age, you never grow. And someone, any one of us would be like, you mean like a vampire? I mean, somebody would
you're right.
say it. They wouldn't go, that's crazy. They'd say, you mean a vampire.
Well, but at this point, there's nothing crazy.
No, they don't label it. There's no labeling.
Yeah.
I guess.
No, it's there's not a single. It's not like I keep. It's funny. You'd think that I'm a huge Twilight fan, but it's interesting to me to compare this to the most popular vampire story of the last 5 years or so. Kristen Stewart's character in Twilight, is yearning to use the word because the word is so obvious to her. But for these people, and remember, Susan Sarandon's a scientist, and by the way, that I think makes her such an attractive kind of person to Catherine Denueve because she's an all new kind of woman. She's almost
That's a good point.
kind of like a male kind of woman. She's a kind of woman that she never would have encountered in the 18th century or anything.
Oh, by the way, Jason, I did think of something that confirms or supports what you were saying about her being a little psychic, and that's when Dr. Roberts, I guess is her name, almost gets hit by a bus.
Yeah.
And you see Miriam visibly just shaken, like, holy crap, what just happened, or something. It's almost like...
Well, she's in her head.
Yes.
Yeah, but I'm just saying,
Yeah.
Like
You're right. She has lots of psychic powers.
Yeah,
and
that's a good point.
So that's, and none of them are drawn out. This is not a movie where there's any desire at all to, sit down and go, let us list, on a page of the official handbook of the Marvel Universe, all the powers and abilities of Miriam. That's just not how it works. There's a lot of them, and there's whatever Tony Scott wants her to be able to do, she can do. She can ping your head while you're standing near her so that you think she said something. She can do
right, which
stuff.
I think is really good. Yeah.
That was neat. I liked that.
Yeah.
So
what do you guys think of David Bowie, by the way? Because we kind of skipped over him.
We should discuss him. He's really not in it very much. I mean, I guess he's really key to the first third. What can I say? He's beautiful. He's the perfect traveling companion, and then he gets old.
He looks good. He looks good, in old man makeup. He still looks, he actually acted quite well.
Oh, he's good.
I thought he was really good. He's, he's playing a character that is very, I don't know. I mean,
it's pathetic. You don't want to think about him. I don't want to think about him a lot because his arc is so painful, and I understand that he's doing a great job with it. So yes, but it's so hard to watch him devolve and become pathetic, and.
But the fact that he can become pathetic and he's David Bowie is such a statement of his talent. It's a test to his talent because David Bowie is not pathetic. I mean, there's nothing pathetic about David Bowie, and so the fact that he can even play that, he worked so hard to play that character. Like I was reading that he would, in order to get his voice to be gravelly for the aged scenes, he would stand on the George Washington Bridge every night and scream all the punk songs that he knew. And he actually learned how to play the cello so that he'd look like he was playing the cello in the music scene. So, I mean, I think he just worked really hard. Now, I think it's amazing, but not surprising that he disappears into this role so much. And I say not surprising because every character he played in his music universe, he also disappeared into. I mean, every single one was a completely different persona.
I think the... Oh, good.
He's convincing at all parts, and it's nice when, because a lot of musicians have tried to be actors and vice versa, but he's one of the few that really he doesn't take a lot of roles, but the roles he's in are usually pretty awesome.
Very memorable.
Very memorable. He's really, really good in it. And in this, kind of moving forwards. I mean, he's the vehicle towards moving everything towards Susan Sarandon. So, seeing him age and just trying to deal with this is really, it's pretty interesting and not what you expect, because you're like, oh, well, look, it's, is it going to be, how's this going to turn out? You don't expect it, especially when you've seen it the first time. You expect beautiful David Bowie for the whole time, and not.
You do. It is a shock.
Old man David Bowie, all of a sudden you're as shocked as he is, kind of. Oh,
yes.
well, he'll get blood,
what?
and then he'll come back, right? And then that never really happens. So.
Yeah,
you're
right.
And then you have old David Bowie jumping out and slashing the neck of roller boogie guy, dancing to the cars
and killing David Bowie killing a child.
Yeah.
Which is really whoa, where's this is completely unexpected.
And at that point
he's the most violent
lost
scene in the whole movie.
We don't have any feeling for him. We don't have any pity for him. He's lost his elegance. So we feel towards him much the same way that Catherine Denueve does, that, this stuff is supposed to be done a certain way, and only the extremely slick and extremely beautiful need apply, and he's no longer part of it, just like we're no longer a part of it. Which is funny also, because it means we're watching a movie that keeps us at a distance too, because we don't get to be part of Catherine Deneuve's club,
only food.
Although many goths got to be part of what I think that, having watched this again, I don't think anything kind of sums up the goth industrial aesthetic as the first intro. The intro video is the perfect 80s goth. Everything about that synopsis, whether you think it's just that's the Hollywood version or whatever, having, been around that scene, it really set the tone. Maybe I don't know, maybe people who already were going to parties like that were like, oh, and then the hunger came out and then it jumped the shark. but whatever it was, it definitely kept it going. I think it's a perfect snapshot of everything, which also informed the cyberpunk genre, which was just kind of
absolutely,
because that scene could just as well be in a cyberpunk rave club at any point as well.
And their look, the look is so sort of 80s new wave with their. At least David Bowie's look, and in that first scene, hers as well. She's dressed up for this particular rave. It's different. In her own home, she dresses very elegantly like Claudette Colbert out of a 1930s movie. But when she's out on the town, she's got these awesome glasses, just like Bowie does. She has this groovy sort of black army hat that's looks.
Yeah.
Wild,
and the people they pick up, the leather miniskirt. And
exactly.
The guy has the glasses and spiky hair. Again, it could be goth, it could be cyberpunk, it could be any of that, and all of that was, fairly prevalent as the look. I mean, definitely many illustrations from Vampire the Masquerade could be cribbed directly from that intro rave.
Oh my God! Of course, a lot of those pictures in those Vampire the Masquerade addendums look
and that's not a knock. It's just the way this movie. Like I said,
this movie defined the generation of vampires.
I didn't have any context for it living in a tiny town where there were no goths, and the people who may have been probably were getting beat up or.
Okay, so dig this, Tony.
So I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if maybe at that point people who had been, that was their scene, like, oh great, now Hollywood's picked it up, which tends to happen.
This is why I think to some extent, basically, people are always going, oh, vampires are over or vampires are back, and it's always, and to be honest, it's just never not happening, because. Okay. If you have this, remember, we talked about Lost Boys, right? If you go back and listen to our show, I'm afraid that I talked about Lost Boys as though there hadn't been anything like this for 10 years. Next week, we're going to talk about Vampire Lovers, which came out in 1971, which is 12 years before this movie. This movie is 2 years before Lost Boys. And yet, the fashions in Lost Boys look kind of like the fashions in The Hunger, only sort of brought to California instead of New York, you know.
Right.
And
by the way, also, you know, you can still go to Elysium on many nights here in Austin and see a similar party to what is happening in The Hunger,
or Bar
some 30 years ago.
Or Bar Sinister in Hollywood.
Yeah.
You know, similarly.
Yeah.
What's interesting, you can bring an interesting point about the Lost Boys, and that is, you know, I think that we are excluded. You know, we are excluded observers in the world of The Hunger. But with Lost Boys, it became much more inclusive. It was more like we could be a part of this club. We could be a part of this generation. It was sort of like, it became attractive in a way that was sort of like attainable. It was hip and cool, but sort of, you know, it was inclusive. It was, if we were, you know, if we showed up in Santa Carla, you know, we would either be food or we'd be invited in. I mean, we were not held at arm's length in Lost Boys. So I mean, I think that's the first time we got invited in.
That's interesting. Yeah, you get to roll with them, and yeah. Well, and it's a much bigger universe. I mean, when you think about in The Hunger, and here's where I want to get to the end. When you think about The Hunger is made up of a vampire universe of really one family, as far as we can tell, and it involves Catherine Deneuve and then her inducted companions. So somebody please tell me what the hell happens at the end of this movie. Because Catherine, I'll tell you what it looks like in like my 20-second version, and then you can pick it apart for me and help me, because I'll tell you what I'm confused by. So, all right, Susan Sarandon comes back. She's feeling all hungry because she's a vampire. Catherine Deneuve says, you need to kill somebody and drink them. Okay, fine. Right. Susan Sarandon kills her lover because she's so desperate, and she comes down with blood streaming down her mouth. She looks awesome. That's great. But then, as she's kissing Catherine Deneuve, Susan Sarandon slashes her own throat, and then, help me,
pours
because
her blood
I'm lost.
into Catherine Deneuve's mouth.
So what?
Because
why does that start?
Because Susan Sarandon now has Catherine Deneuve's blood coursing through her veins, and now it comes back into Catherine Deneuve, and for some reason that breaks the spell of the or changes the spell. It changes.
So let's tell the audience what basically happens. So she does that. There's blood going back and forth between their mouths. Susan Sarandon is so weakened that Catherine Deneuve decides, well, it looks like you're not going to make it as a companion, so I'm going to take you and stick you up in my doves and curtains attic. And so she comes back and puts her in another coffin, and I guess says to Talia, the really old one, Talia, I'm really sorry, I was just here last night, I know that, but this is
She doesn't put Susan Sarandon in a coffin. She puts Susan Sarandon down on the ground.
Oh, right, she puts her on the ground.
Right.
Yeah.
But she doesn't have time to do anything because they all show up. All the zombies have gotten out of their, all the mummies have gotten out of their boxes and approach.
Okay, so why?
Miriam.
Why do they chase Miriam? Why does Miriam die? Why does she die? I just don't get it. I don't understand.
The spell was broken or changed or whatever once she reconsumed her own blood mixed with Susan Sarandon's. That's all. I mean, we're not going to get a better explanation than that.
That's interesting. Although I was thinking that, you know, this is something where maybe no one's ever sort of killed themselves before, and it was sort of like, you know, she brought herself. Susan Sarandon did the very thing that, you know, maybe Miriam couldn't kill Bowie or anything else because, you know, he was already so far gone that maybe it does something, right? Maybe you sort of cross over into this other thing. But Susan Sarandon kills herself, basically. Let's just assume that she brings herself to the end of life, but to the beginning of sort of, you know, being undead or something like that, where she sort of now is like Miriam.
Yes.
And it just seems like, no, she can't bring herself to kill. We think she can't bring herself to kill anybody. Maybe it's something like by the time they age, she can't change them, or she won't change them, or she won't make them immortal. Maybe there's something she doesn't know. It just seems like the one thing that changes is that Susan Sarandon has a conscience and actually kills herself.
Right.
And because of it, it's almost like there's somebody who's an equal to Miriam who's now sort of
Both pieces. The fact that she kills herself, and then the fact that she feeds the blood back to Miriam.
And so that's a sort of a magical concept that Susan Sarandon is now inheriting Catherine Denueve's mantle by being of a greater will than her. And I can I can buy that, but it's very, very, that's very magic and philosophical for a movie that's not so magic so far, I guess, except for all the psychic stuff. It's hard to say. But, okay, I'll buy that. I'll buy that.
Well, the other thing is, all of her lovers recognize this is an opportunity to break the spell, and they all sort of turn against her, and as they sort of turn against her, she, it's almost like for years I thought maybe the fall is something that she, me being thinking too deeply about it. Maybe she, has, it's a Star Trek episode, right? Too much cellular damage somehow rapidly ages her. I think that is a Star Trek episode.
Well, also there's a different blood exchange that happens. Like, it happens differently. Usually it's like one way, but there's almost like a two-way blood exchange in that kiss.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And
that's
I think that is part of it's kind of the reciprocal, because they already go through, it's not really magic, although it could be, depending on how you want to think about the blood thing. But it reverses whatever's happening. It's somehow reversing things, because when she kisses her and they exchange blood again, it's almost like breaking the cycle by changing the cycle. And that, I think, is again, it's, your guess is as good as mine, but that's kind of what I saw as the different thing, because that never happens again. And we see in a lot of vampire movies where there is an actual exchange, right?
Yes.
But when we see previously, it's always the Bowie character or whoever is previous, Susan Sarandon's character, it's always a one-way kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So
you're right.
When they kiss, there's an exchange of blood that's different than it was before, and I think that's the key.
Or maybe there's something even simpler than that. Maybe this has been about domination the entire time, and her lovers over the centuries have been changed and dominated, and she even puts them in boxes when they stay there. Susan Sarandon is the only one who's ever said no.
Yeah.
And taken her own life. But then maybe it's the thing that she keeps them, not because she can't get rid of them or she doesn't want to be alone, but because maybe they give her strength. Maybe their energy, their souls, their whatever gives her strength. And in the moment when they see someone who's now stronger than Catherine Deneuve, they rise up. And in rising up, they overthrow her literally, in this case. And then the mantle of power is handed over. And Susan Sarandon even later disappears, goes off, and then starts her own community.
Right.
So
that's what we get to. Yeah, in fact, so you're right. Susan's basically, Catherine Deneuve is no longer the fairest one of all.
It may not be a scientific thing. It may just be entirely this whole thing about power and about the lovers that are kept. Maybe they provide power. Maybe they do something, but they are kept in.
Which means, of course, that it is a little different from the way you've described the book, and that's okay. It's a different concept, because what happens next is we find Sarah off in this London tower, not the London Tower, but a London tower, with an awesome.
Well, no. What happens next is that. What happens next actually is So she falls from the top floor and becomes a mummy or whatever. And then the next scene, everything's cleaned up. Because I was like, well, what happened? Like, what happens when they discover all the bodies and all the whatever? Everything is all cleaned up, and there's like a realtor in there selling the house. And so then the question is, how did that get all cleaned up, and what happened here? And then you see, it turns out that whatever her name was, Dr. Roberts. What's her first name? Susan Sarandon. Sarah. Yeah.
Sarah.
That Sarah is actually still alive and well and all vampy herself. And I just felt sad for her, but whatever. And that she has now Miriam in a coffin, and Miriam's over there yelling.
Well, that's true. That seemed more like a sort of a gag from Tony Scott, because I thought that didn't make any sense, because we just saw her turn to dust essentially, but now she's in a box. But whatever, that's fine. Maybe the mummy that was left, she put it in a box and it's yelling at her. That's fine. And Susan Sarandon, I guess, has become hard and cold like Catherine Deneuve was, and she has this beautiful young sort of tennis couple or whatever they are. and that's how we cut it. Susan Sarandon has become a
Miriam.
A creature of the night, another Miriam, and a beautiful one. So, wow, just astonishing and beautiful. So, we should go around and get our final thoughts on The Hunger, and also our endorsements. So, going around. What did we say? It was Adam, Julia, Tony, Jason. So, Adam, the final thoughts on The Hunger, especially for those listening who might have never seen this movie before, and also if you have anything that you want to endorse, go crazy.
Listen, I think this is a great movie. There are a lot of little problems where you can pick it apart and everything else, but look when it was released, and we're still sort of talking about it. Mm-hmm. And I think it's at the height of, Catherine Denueve's beauty, and it's certainly, one of the more beautiful pictures that Tony Scott did. Certainly adds to the tapestry of vampire lore, certainly of vampire cinema. And, just the lineup of the cast that makes it just awesome. If you haven't seen the picture, you really should. It's really seminal viewing. In film school and kind of thereafter, I even studied it just for cinematography and editorial. There are a lot of really great tricks and sound and visuals and music and timing and pacing that are sort of used in cross-cutting. And it's an amazing piece of work. It just is. There are better vampire pictures, that are more sort of core to the genre, but it's such a beautiful picture. I think that's, why it remains today. And it's so beautiful. You want it to sort of exist on its own somewhere, and I think it's still relevant. So it's great. You should see it. You should also probably read the book. I think what I keep hearing is the book is really terrific. I've only read a little bit of it. It's very, very different. But you should probably, it's one of those things where you probably should do both. It's a very, very liberal adaptation. It's a great picture. As far as endorsements are concerned, it's funny. I saw a trailer for something the other day. Frank Langella, speaking of vampires, again, one of the best Draculas around, John Badham's Dracula. But he's in a picture called Robot and Frank.
Oh, yeah. I missed a screening of that because I was really busy and I wanted to see it big time.
How was it? Was it good?
No, I didn't get to go. I was really super busy, but I really wanted to go, and I was like, oh, man, it looked really good there.
I've seen Langella in a bunch of different things, and he's such a tremendous actor. And when I watched it, this may not be the kind of picture I'm typically drawn to, but I was really drawn to it. So it's sort of pre-endorsing it. It's sort of like, I haven't seen it yet, I can't vouch for it, but at least the trailer was cool, and I really want to see it. So.
All right. Julia, final thoughts on The Hunger and endorsements, of course.
If talking to people who haven't seen the movie, then I just want to apologize for spoiling the entire movie for you. But yeah,
we have a warning at the beginning.
I know,
just in case.
She's a vampire.
But yeah, it's really cool looking, and I would add to everything Adam said, the makeup and the fashion also are just fabulous. I mean, and then, like I said, the mummy effect. So yeah, it's a really beautiful looking movie, and it's got some neat little pieces to it, and just the cast is awesome. So yeah, I definitely recommend it. My endorsements, we had the pleasure of seeing a band called Danger Cakes on Saturday, which is an all-girl band led by our podcast mate, Drew Edwards' wife, Jamie. So I went to endorse them because that was a fantastic show, and I think the special treat for us, Jason and me, was that at the end there was a cameo by Drew because she sings "My Boyfriend Is a Zombie," and so he comes on and does a little zombie impression and even sings a bit, and he's actually a pretty good singer. So that was really cool. So I enjoyed that a lot, and I encourage you to look out for Austin-based all-girl band Danger Cakes.
Danger Cakes, yes, absolutely. And I loved that show. That was such a great show, and Jamie is such a fantastic performer, and she's so full of life, and with her stand-up bass, and she the way she smiles as she does these rockabilly songs is just really neat experience. Tony, final thoughts, The Hunger, the movie version.
Actually, just on a tail note, like I was actually in a, I don't know what ever happened in the video, but I was actually, if it ever comes out, a zombie at some point when they were filming what I guess was potentially a video for that song, and then took that makeup and won a copy of Dylan Dog when they showed the screening of Dylan Dog here, and because the director was here. It was just random. It just worked out. But I also endorse Danger Cakes because they're awesome. Some of the most fun I've had at shows. So.
It is a very fun show. Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. I sort of
really
enjoyed
like
it every bit.
too. It's really awesome. As far as final thoughts, I mean, one thing I go back to this movie really does show us a lot of the really cool stuff that Tony Scott left us as his legacy. He made so many just cool touchstones for our generation. I think especially, growing up through all of that it's really cool going back to these and that it's a shame that we remember some of these things or remember these things in the same way, after somebody passes rather than a constant kind of reminder of like, man, that person's really cool. They do this cool art, It takes the kind of retrospective, like, oh, he's gone. I guess we'll never have another The Hunger again. It's kind of a shame that that's the way humans kind of work. Is that's what we do, for better or worse. But so much good stuff in here, and just so again, I just was constantly struck with the, wow, that looks like Blade Runner. Wow, it's in the family, like how, like what a weird thing, and it's a beautiful movie. It's kind of again another one of the slow burn movies. It's not for everyone. It's pretty. If you're looking for Blade, this is probably the diametric opposite of that. I've also heard from a bunch of people that you're usually a fan of the book or the movie, and rarely both. But it does show off some great performances from a lot of really great actors, and Bowie's awesome in it. Is it a movie I'd watch all the time? Probably not, but it's a cool one to come back to from time to time. And again, setting, for better or worse, I think it set the precedent for where we are now in vampire movies, because it definitely was on the, hey, look, vampires are pretty sexy. Look at this. I mean, it's the Bowie, check him out. That kind of, Catherine Denueve, wow. Susan Sarandon, wow. And so kind of got away a little bit from, Hammer was doing that, of course. But, Hammer was still, this was it was a big deal that the actors and actresses that were in this were in it,
That's a good point.
It was a little bit more mainstream than a lot of, you may not have
It's in New York, it's not in Europe. Yeah,
you might not have caught, Dracula, 76? But you might have caught this.
Yeah, 78, yeah.
78. Yeah, and so I think that, setting also, showing off like, hey, look, here's this, this Goth scene, and Bauhaus is doing, what amounts to a Bauhaus music video at the beginning.
That's absolutely right.
Really awesome intercuts with the car.
It's sort of brazen that it's really a Bauhaus video. I mean, it really
is. Yeah, it is a music video. Yeah, it sure is. During the height of between the beginning of the sort of the rise of music videos.
You're right. That's a good point. That would be something kind of really with it and new and now to open with a music video.
Yeah.
Wow.
And all of that just kind of works. I really like it. As far as endorsements, I guess our big thing is I had my first real huge gig with, or relatively huge gig, even though it was a Sunday night, with my new band, Pocari Shred, and we played a lot of Japanese rock tunes, and people seemed to really, really have a good time. So that was really awesome. You can also check us out on Facebook. It's Pocari Shred, Pocari Shred. And hopefully Deserts of Mars will be back very soon. So, but I'm trying to think what else. I don't know.
No, but that's strong.
Fantastic Fest is coming up, and I'm sure I'll have many reports of awesome horror movies from that, because it's
something else that I want to mention about Tony is, and myself, is that our SciComm should be coming out on Graphically probably like this week.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we haven't made that announcement, but it'll be.
So you'll be able to read our entire manga series on the web and on your devices.
That's cool.
Yeah, I'm excited. They've come out before, but once they're in, a book comes out, it's in paperback, it's hard to get a hold of. So anybody who wants to go back and read all three sort of 150 or 160 page issues, now it's all going to be in one place. I'm very excited about that. It's like 400 pages of 400 pages of Tony and Jason goodness. That'll be great.
Cool.
Okay, and my final thought. I mean, this is. Boy, I'm so excited to have the opportunity to talk about The Hunger, because I love vampire movies, and this was just such an important one. I remember when I went to every vampire convention I've ever been to, The Hunger is really important to people early on. It's the red shoes of vampire movies.
That's great.
It is, and so I really enjoyed getting a chance to see this. You totally should see it. It's a sexy movie. Watch it as a date. And as an endorsement, all I'll point out is next week, the next 3 weeks, we're continuing our sexy vampire retrospective. We are down for 3 hammers, boy. We're going to do Vampire Lovers, and then Lust for a Vampire, and then Twins of Evil. And so what I would do is I would hie thee hither to go start with Vampire Lovers, which is yet another version of Carmilla. So this is going to be so fun. I really want to thank Adam for joining us this time and picking up for Drew. Thank you so much. You always have so much to add, and thanks, Tony, and thank you, Julia, once again. And everybody, please like us on Facebook and vote for us on iTunes and give suggestions, and soon I think we'll probably have people vote on what the next retrospective will be, because we have so many requests, and we just we're going to have to just figure out like what comes next. So these are some exciting Mondays. Everybody have a fantastic week, and I will talk to you all soon. Thank you.
Night.
Thanks again. Really enjoyed it.
Absolutely, sir.
Bye.